Hey everybody, Suz here, back with another keto dinner ideas video. If you're new here, we make weekly keto cooking videos to give you a little motivation and inspiration to get in the kitchen and get your keto and low carb cooking on. This week we're focusing on keto sheet pan dinners. If you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and join our crew. Let's get into the video. First up, we have these awesome sheet pan steak fajitas. This is adapted from a recipe from Ditch the Carbs. So first off, in a large bowl, I have 1 pound of sliced top sirloin cap steak, and I'm adding to that half of a white onion that I just sliced roughly, along with half of a red bell pepper sliced and half of a yellow bell pepper sliced. To that, I'm just drizzling about 1/4 of a cup extra virgin olive oil, and then just getting in there with a spatula and mixing this around a little bit before we add our seasoning to it. And for that, I'm using 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, a half a teaspoon of chili powder, like chili con carne powder, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/4 of a teaspoon sea salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon ground black pepper, and 2 tablespoons of lime juice. She adds lemon and lime and zest, but I did it like this and I love the way it turned out. Then I'm just mixing this all together really well so I can make sure everything's evenly coated and seasoned. On a non-stick foil lined baking sheet, I'm just dumping this all out, spreading it into an even layer, and popping it into a 350-degree oven for 10 minutes. Then I just pulled it out, used some tongs to kind of toss everything around a little bit, and popped it back into the 350 oven for another 5 minutes. And while that was finishing cooking, I went ahead and steamed a little bag of cauliflower rice in the microwave, pulled it out, seasoned it with a little Kerrygold butter, salt, pepper, and cumin, and served my steak fajitas over the top of it, and these were excellent. Next time I make these, I'll probably make a double batch, but for this amount, it was perfect for my husband and I to each have 2 servings apiece. Just a tip: when you're slicing your steak, slice it when it's slightly frozen. If it's fresh, just pop it in the freezer for a couple minutes, and then that will let you get this nice thin slices. Next up, we did some keto oven baked pork chops with broccoli. These were inspired by a recipe by Casey Trenum that I'll link down below. I did do mine differently than hers. I just wanted to simplify it a little bit. So to start with, in a small mixing bowl, I have 2 tablespoons of butter, and I just melted that in the microwave, added a couple tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, a tablespoon of minced garlic, a tablespoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon dried thyme, half a teaspoon sea salt, half a teaspoon ground black pepper, and then I'm just mixing that together really well before adding a half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And then as I'm mixing that was thicker than I wanted it to be, so I went ahead and added probably another 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil to our mix, and then whisked that in as well. Now over on a baking sheet, I have it lined with nonstick foil, and I have 4 about 1 inch thick cut boneless pork loin chops. I always just buy a really big pork loin and slice these myself and put them in the freezer. And I'm just using a silicone basting brush to coat both sides of our chops, flipping those over and doing the other side as well. And after I have those all the way coated, I'm grabbing a 16-ounce bag of organic broccoli florets. I always buy these from Costco, and these aren't totally hard frozen. I took them out a little bit before I started this, so they're kind of halfway between frozen and thawed out, and I'm just lining those up on my pan with my pork chops and using a little teaspoon to just put dollops of the rest of our Parmesan cheese blend on top of our broccoli. And this is going to crisp up in the oven, almost like the little Parmesan cheese wisps. I don't know if any of you have had those, but it gives it a nice little crunch to the roasted broccoli. After I have that all done, I'm popping this whole thing into a 400-degree oven for 40 minutes. And here is what it looks like when it comes out. Now, she tops her pork chops with mozzarella cheese, and you could do that as well. I opted to just do mine like this so I could just prep everything in one go round and put it in the oven and pull it out, and it's done without any back and forth. This is it plated up. This was excellent. Pork chops were nice and tender. The broccoli had a nice crispness to it from the Parmesan cheese mixture. Highly recommend checking this out. Very easy recipe to throw together for a weeknight meal. Next up, up, I have a recipe I've been working on, which is a Harissa salmon with radishes. So to start with, in a medium-sized bowl, I have half of a small red onion that I just sliced into wedges. And I also added a bunch of radishes. I think this was like 8 whole radishes that were in my bunch, and I just washed those, sliced them in half. And I'm topping this with about 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, half a teaspoon sea salt, 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, and just giving those a couple tosses with my spatula to make sure they're fully coated. On a baking sheet, pouring those out, spreading them out, and I'm gonna pop these into a 450-degree oven for 20 minutes. While those are cooking, I have a small mixing bowl here, adding 2 tablespoons of harissa paste. That's the one that flashed really quickly that I use, along with 1 heaping teaspoon of minced garlic and 1 teaspoon of grated ginger. And I am just mixing this together with my spoon a little bit before adding in a splash of extra virgin olive oil and mixing that in as well. Now I have 4 about 6 to 7 ounce salmon fillets here, and I'm just going to spoon our harissa mixture on top of each of these and spread it out evenly, and then let these just sit with the sauce on them at room temperature while our radishes are cooking for the first go round. Topping those with a little bit of Himalayan pink salt and ground black pepper, and pulling our radishes and onions out of the oven. I'm just using a spatula to separate our radishes to the side and our onions kind of to the middle, because you can see they're nice and flavorfully cooked right now, but I didn't want them to overcook and burn in the oven. So I have those all in the middle, and I'm just gonna lay our salmon fillets skin side down on top of our onions so they can get the nice flavor of that in them, but I can kind of stop that charring process. Popping this back into the 450-degree oven for 20 minutes because I like my salmon well done, and here it is plated up. This was excellent, and if you wanted, you could even double the radishes in this recipe, but I ordered 1 bunch of radishes and that's what I got. Next up, I have another recipe that I am working on, which is a keto roasted chicken thighs with a mustard vinaigrette cabbage. So to start with, in a small bowl, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of extra virgin olive oil, 2 tablespoons of stone ground mustard, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, 1.5 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and I am just whisking this together, and it takes just a little bit to get everything mixed in with the oil. Sticking that to the side on a baking sheet I have lined with nonstick foil. I'm laying out some cabbage. I just took a small head of green cabbage and sliced it into about 1-inch thick wedges. When you're slicing your cabbage, you want to make sure that you're slicing it through the core so that you can get these to stick together pretty well. And just laying those out on my baking sheets. And using a silicone basting brush, I'm just going to put half of that mustard vinaigrette mixture on one side of our cabbage. Gently flip each of those over and coat the other side also with the remaining mustard vinaigrette. Then I'm adding 1/2 of a small red onion that I just sliced into rings onto our cabbage and kind of tucked down in the middle of the cabbage. And then I'm drizzling a little bit of olive oil on each of the slices of onion and just kind of brushing that across. We're going to top this onion with our chicken. So to put our seasoning blend together for that, I have 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/2 teaspoon sea salt, and 1/2 teaspoon ground black pepper, and I'm just using my measuring spoon to mix that together really well. Taking 6 skin-on chicken thighs, drizzling those with a couple tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, flipping those over, making sure they're all fully coated with our olive oil. Taking our seasoning mixture and with sprinkling with one hand and rubbing it in with the other, just rubbing that seasoning mixture all over our chicken thighs, and then flipping them over and repeating the process. And I do always like to pull the skin up and make sure I'm getting that seasoning in directly on the chicken as well. Now I'm just gonna lay these skin side up right on top of our cabbage and onion, and I am strategically covering up our onions so that those do not get charred too much in the oven while our chicken is roasting. And popping it into a 425-degree oven for 40 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. The cabbage has just a nice little brown tinge to it. Our chicken thigh skin is nice and crispy, and our onions are fully cooked and softened underneath without being burnt. And here it is plated up. Just served it with 1 chicken thigh with a wedge of cabbage with an onion on top. This was absolutely excellent, and I hope to have a recipe written up for this on our website soon. But for now, I feel like the ingredients are pretty simple enough for all of these recipes that you can just jot them down while you're watching the video. And there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's keto dinner ideas video. Make sure you drop any suggestions that you have down below. I always love chit-chatting with each of you. Subscribe to our channel, like the video, share it with your friends, and until next time, bye guys.